Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back with another slime video. And today we're going into EX2 of the new Hakuro Beatdown battle. This is the final stage you need to do to get his dupe, and then you can grind and you can parallel process it for the currency to buy the rest of his dupes out of the shop. This stage is a bit of a power creep because of the amount of HP they start with. Like, Albus has almost, 655,000. The other two have slightly less, 600k right there. Grucius is 648. But it's like, you look at that, and then you look at what Inferno 1 has, and it's just a disgusting jump. From 655 to 3 million. So, newer players, 655 is a pretty tall ask for them. Especially if they don't have, good gear and a really, functionally well-built team. Other things to note is that Albus does seal body and spirit skills. So healing, vengeance especially. She nerfs greens for 10 turns. So she does a lot. She also binds you for 2 turns on turn 4. So that's something to watch out for. Sufia gives them defense. So physical resistance, crit resistance, lowers our attack, and increases their guard rate. And then Grucius gives them crit, gives them physical and crit damage, gives own earth attack, and then more defense, and then recovers stat abnormalities, which means that you cannot vengeance, like extra vengeance. There is a way. You can bring a double stunner if you want, but if you only stun Albus for the body and spirit seal, Grucius will cleanse it. And if you try and stun Grucius, well, you're not going to be able to because Albus has the seal. So you have to stun both of them if you're going to try and do that, and that's a very tall ask. So we're going to show off probably 3 or 4 teams in this video, and then we'll come back with a part 2 for another couple more teams, and we'll just try and clear it with a number of different builds that have released thus far, and for varying levels of players, right? So let's just jump in. All right. So in an effort to make this video not an hour long, we're going to speed it up, and we're going to voice it over. But first off, we're going to use the quote-unquote meta team, right? The new Benimaru, the new Momiji, free-to-play Hakuro, and then we've got the previous month's free-to-play Rieger, who works well on this team, even though he's not Ogre's Pride. We have the 4-star free-to-play Soka that you can get out of the flashback shop, so she's not, locked behind a time wall. And then we've got old Water Shuna, who is an Ogre, on Ogre's Pride, has an orb change, has an alt buff. So, we have the damage coming off of Momiji herself, the alt buff, the power from Benimaru, and then we just have 3 orb changers, and Hakuro to alt rush. So, this team does plenty of damage by itself, even using mostly free-to-play characters. So I think that goes to show the power of Momiji, and that massive 100% pierce power buff that you can get. So, it is just 8 turns of stacking. I'll call out the specific turns you need to be aware of, and then we'll probably, for the other clips, we're not going to sit here for all 8 turns. You'll understand how to play this. So, turn 1, we brought Soka specifically because we can orb change turn 1, because Hakuro costs 35 points, and unless you have one of the SP turn 1 units, like Space Millum, or Wind Lumi, or Water Soe, fully duped up, or at least a 92, you're not going to be able to orb change turn 1. Unless, with Hakuro. So you need to bring someone else, or just send the 4 blue orbs turn 1. Either way works. But we have an alt for Shuna already. That's cool and everything. I'm using an alt gauge on blue charm to ensure that we can get Momiji's alt. Not really a big problem with this specific team build, because we're running Hakuro who can rush her alt, but on my whale tryhard teams, it's a little bit more important. But I didn't want to use the whale tryhard team because not a lot of people can replicate it. So I wanted to go a bit more, quote-unquote free-to-play friendly, right? I still have the Momiji and Benimaru, but they're the meta. We got to show it off the first time. So this turn 4 coming in. We've been sealed for body and spirit. That happened on turn 2. But turn 4 is where you get binded in for 2 turns. So if you don't want that, you're going to have to move somebody away. So right here, we're contemplating who's going to come out. Do I want to bring Soka in from Momiji? Because at the end of the 2-turn bind, you get attack nerfed for another turn by 40%. and that puts you at turn 6. Going, so that doesn't give you a lot of time. If you leave a character out of the bind, they will not be binded, and they will not get that attack nerf, which is good. So here, Albus, bind, right there. If you have some bind evasion earrings with some enchantments on, you can get around it, technically. I do have some in my gear, but I'm not using them currently. So, I mean, you could play with some RNG and pray that somebody doesn't get binded, and then you'd have maybe an alt swapper, an orb changer that can come in and out and make your run a little bit easier for the next 2 turns. We're not really going for that right now. So we're just going to send these orbs, we're going to play it up. So now there's the attack nerf coming in. So now it'll be turn 6, the bind is gone, but the attack nerf remains. So if you have your DPS up front, they're going to have to stay in it to get rid of that nerf. But thankfully we left Momiji out, so we can bring her back now. We can orb change, and then we can start alt rushing, which does increase our blue orb damage. Not really the most impactful thing in the world. It'll mean a bit more when we get to like the nuke turn and you're trying to send like super buffed Momiji orbs. That's gonna matter a lot. But right now, 10-20% here and there, when we're not stacking any other kind of attack, not really super impactful. But turn 7, there we go, we have the EX ult from Momiji. We've been spreading the damage out so our AoE ult can kill, everyone at the same time. And now, I mean, we only have Shuna and Momiji for actual damage buffs, and then the Protector Benimaru. Now it's turn 8, now we get that 100% Pierce power, so we'll orb change with Sokka. Didn't need to do it with her, but whatever, we could have just used Hakuro. But boom, 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 alt buff, Pierce resistance down, fire buff, Pierce rate, Benimaru, 1 more stack of alt damage plus the 100% Pierce power, and Momiji does 1.58, 1.6 million. So we just about one-shot everything. Yeah, that's a lot of power from just 2 mainline battle support units, right? So we've got a bunch of free-to-play old characters here. This team can certainly do it. You won't hit those numbers if you're, maybe you have Benimaru and you have Momiji, you have Shuna, you have this whole team, but your gear is lacking, your stats are lacking, you're not going to hit 1.5, but we didn't need to go 1.5. We needed to hit 700, basically, and we did quite a bit more than that. So definitely a very easy to use team. Alright, the next team, maybe not as accessible as people would like because we are using the Konosuba collab Protector Rimuru, so you either have him or you don't, and that's just the unfortunate way of this game. But he does give Adventurer Force extra damage against Earth enemies, which we are fighting Earth. So we're going to bring Christmas Shuna as our AoE fire nuker on the Adventurer team, and we're going to buff her up with Guy, who's got guaranteed crits if we want to give it to her, which we don't really want to do because the stage does not like crits. And he's also got Orb Change. Physical Fount of Wisdom Rimuru has the physical buff for our physical fire Shizu. Light Raphael has the guaranteed Pierce and ult resistance down on 1 enemy. Shizu herself has that AoE debuff, Pierce power buff, very small, but it's still something, and then the fire buff. And if she's skill fused, you also get fire resistance down. And then we've got Blanc for the alt swapping, the weakness strike. The synergy resistance means nothing, because we're not going to synergy here unless we naturally hit it, but she is nice to have for the alt swapping capabilities. It's very important now on most teams, especially stacking teams. So turn 1, we can use Guy to change this hand, and then, turn 2 will be up in the air. But this is going to run the same way as the meta team, it's just different units. It's still a blue stacking team, so nothing really changes, just the Protector and the supports. So I don't think we need to sit here for 5 minutes watching this. Turn 2 was very lucky, just 1 green orb. Guy can change that too. We've got a double stack of Rimuru. He's stacking permanent alt damage on us. So bringing Octogram Lumi for this team is a bit redundant. You would get the 30% AoE buff, but you would very quickly overshadow her 80% permanent buff, because 2 permanent buffs do not stack together. So if you use all 4 stacks of Lumi and you have 4 stacks of Rimuru, it's still 80%. So I wouldn't really bring Lumi here. And even with the Protector Benimaru, because he stacks alt damage as well, I also wouldn't really bring Octogram Lumi. Not for just the 30% AoE buff, no matter how actually powerful it is. But here, turn 3, we got a good orb change hand. We can bring Fount of Wisdom Rimuru in, and then change those. And we don't even need an EX ult for Fire Shizu, because she's not an EX character. So we don't need to worry about that, which makes it nice, because now we have an ult for her. And now we can safely send her away on the bind turn, and it's not like we're missing out on any extra ult gauge. We're not missing any stacks, because Rimuru is stacking ult, and that hits the backline as well. So, this team can do it. Certainly. Most definitely. So, I think we'll skip ahead here after we hit the bind. Or we leave Shizu in. I mean, either way. But we're going to take her out. So then that leaves us a guy orb change, and now we have our orb changers and our alt swapper up front on the bind turns, which is really good, because that means that we can pretty safely attempt to get more stacks. And that's a little unfortunate right there, because we didn't. But in a perfect world, right, we would be able to full convert into another hand of blue right here. Oh well. So now we'll skip ahead to the nuke. Turn 7, yeah, end of turn 7 right here. So we have an EX Blanc ult, cool, fine, whatever. Not really important, but we're going to use Guy's ult buff now, before Shizu's up front, so she doesn't nerf herself with the crit. And then we'll use the physical buff, the weakness strike, the fire attack, the AoE the AoE debuff, and the Pierce power buff. And then we'll bring Raphael in, and we'll give her Pierce. And alt resistance down on Albus, who has the most HP out of all the enemies, so better to target her. And then Shizu does 885 versus Albus, 606 versus everyone else. 606 is not enough to completely one-shot Sufia, or actually for Grucius, because he has like 648. But the damage that we've done throughout the rest of the fight took his health down low enough that we could one-shot him with this ult. So this team certainly can get it done. It's just you need a collab protector. So good luck. Alright, next up is the Commander meta. So Renard, we've got 2nd Anniversary Hinata for the element. Glenda has the alt swap. Lumi has the alt buff and the AoE. We've got Fire Shizu, Commander, so she's AoE. She's got the orange convert. She's got the physical buff and the EX alt. And then Hinata has the special green convert and the alt buff and synergy down. So, I mean, this team certainly will also be able to do it just by virtue of having a very strong AoE EX nuker, and we're just going to buff the crap out of her. So this team, all blue stacking teams function the same exact way. So if you have never seen a blue team, well, congratulations. You've just watched 3 blue teams in a row now. And if you have, you probably don't need to actually watch this clip. You just need to know the team build. And this is what I use. You don't need 2nd Anniversary Hinata by any means. You could bring another orb changer. You could bring friggin' Tempest Elite Gapta. You could bring him, since we need more green orb changing than just Hinata sometimes. That's an option, and he's physical, which, synergies with the EX boards for, the main characters here. Or you could bring Geld or, Water Rimuru, one of those. You could bring Rieger if you want, but, you don't need the oranges, since Shizu will literally change all of them. So, not a big deal. Yeah. We're just going to cut ahead to this, because we don't need to sit here and watch it. You know what turn you need to, watch out for the bind. This is a dead run anyways, so it doesn't really matter. Alright, turn 7. Going to turn 8, we have the EX ult for Shizu. We don't have the full stacks of Lumi. Not a huge loss, though. We're missing 1 stack of the ult. But we need the points now to nuke properly, so we're not going to use that final stack. So, Hinata in, element buff, cool. Glenda in, physical resistance down, and the synergy rate. And then we'll use the big-time Shizu and Hinata buffs. We've been stacking weakness strike and alt resistance down with Renard. And I guess we can convert here for funsies onesies, just because we have the points for it. And Shizu does 3.5 million. So yeah, you don't need 2nd Anniversary Hinata. you probably don't even need friggin' Octogram Lumi skill fused. You can just bring her normally and get 60% extra ult damage and call it a day, because, yeah, they only have, at max, 658,000 HP. Unnecessary damage, but it's always fun to see. Also, in the same vein as the Commander meta, we had the Primal Demon meta right before, and, technically part of the 2.5 anniversary. We're not bringing Blanc, because she's a single target, and, even though we get extra ult damage and stuff, not really that important when it's an AoE fight. So, Misery, Space Jean, Earth Jean, Octogram Lumi skill fused, double skill fused, and then we've got Diablo for the AoE. Now, Diablo is space, so we are already not looking so hot because we're type disadvantage. But the EX ult, the physical buff, the Pierce buff, the 170% ult damage, the AoE buff, and the permanent ult from Lumi, and then the 100% element resistance down, does mean that we can do barely enough, and I mean barely. The weakness strike from Jean means nothing because we're type disadvantage. We are getting attack stacks from Violet. Her little gimmick of using skills multiple times a turn means nothing to this team because Blanc isn't here, and that's the only reason she exists, is to help Blanc. We don't need to watch this. Diablo changes all greens just like Shizu did all oranges. Misery changes 3 Primal Demon oranges, and we have 4 of them here, so we just have to worry about Lumi being up front. But we'll cut to the end of the fight. So on turn 7, we have the ult for Misery, we have the ult for Diablo, and honestly, if we didn't have the ult with Misery, we would not have killed. And that's kind of sad to say. We're only missing, I think, 1 stack of the permanent ult buff from Lumi, which technically I could have used here, because I kind of spaced on the 300 points from Jean, but it is what it is. So physical buff and pierce. The stage does want you to pierce anyways, so that's good. And now we'll use the element resistance down. Technically, Space Jean gave 50% space down, but now we're getting 100, so that's nice. She reset the cost, so now we can have a full hand of blue. We'll use the final stack of Violet, and then we'll send all these orbs, starting with Misery, and then following up with everything else. And Misery does... how much? Like 100 something? Yeah, 153, 174, because we synergied there. And then Diablo comes with 510, give or take, which, is not the, how much HP they have. They have 600 plus. So that's why I said, if we didn't have that extra 150k coming from Misery, Diablo by himself wouldn't have killed. He would have gotten them very, very low, but we didn't do a lot of damage this entire run because we're physical, and our primary character we're attacking with is Space. So we weren't taking off chunks of HP leading up to the nuke turn either. So this is doable, but, it requires a lot of support to make Diablo get past that type disadvantage barrier, alongside the physical resistance that they have. But it is an option if you can build, this specific team right here. Also, alright, the final team for the video is going to be that sad, sad Determination to Prosper team that came out last month. Quite honestly, you probably shouldn't have summoned for this meta, so I don't even really know why I'm showing it to you guys, but it certainly is an option because Fire Lumi is fire and magic, and while we're not getting the extra damage buff, she still does enough damage on this team because, we've got the stacking weakness strike, we've got the guaranteed crits and crit seal, or well, not seal, but he lowers crit resistance by 100%, and the enemies have 100% crit resistance, so it just negates it, so you can just crit and get that 30% extra damage increase. And then Almesia has her, fire and earth ult buff and the ult resistance down, so you'll be able to do good damage with this team, especially alongside Octogram Lumi again, who's buffing ult damage permanently, and the AoE buff. And you do have, not a lot of RNG for orbs for this, because Lumi is changing, all the orbs for fire and earth to blues, so it does eliminate a lot. Things can get expensive, but especially with, the bind turn going on here, you can just use that as a write-off and just have it be 2 turns of, I'm going to reset all of my skills on the team, right? That's what I used it for in this run. So I'm not trying to get 8 turns of straight up Lumi converts. No, there's going to be, you know, like 5 turns of it, because 2 of them are negligible. So it does make things a little bit nice. And quite honestly, if you have any other stacking protector, like if you have the new Benimaru protector, like you can put Lumi on that and she'll work, right? Stacking protector, alt damage, as long as you can have someone that gives Lumi guaranteed pierce. I mean, you could put Dark Shion on the team, or Tempest Elite, well, maybe not Tempest Elite Shuna, but, well, you could, because she gives everybody pierce, but the orb change isn't really that great, but you have Lumi. So, I mean, you could put Lumi just on under a stacking protector in general, and she'll be fine, alongside Elmesia if you have her. I know people probably want Elmesia more, and her Elmesia stonks are going way up with, you know, back-to-back fire and earth metas coming out. And, you know, her restriction, well, yeah, it was terrible when she came out last month, is now been buffed significantly by having more fire and earth, well, more fire characters coming out, because we're guaranteed to get at least 1 more this month. You know, probably a single target, either Soe or Shion, one of the 2. We know Soe is guaranteed because of Hakuro's EX board, and then Shion, just logically, she needs an EX battle character. So that's what I'm banking on. I don't know what order they'll come out, but if we don't get a Shion here and we get yet another Shuna, that'd be very disappointing. So turn 4 comes up. We have a good hand right here, right? We can just alt swap and use the orange convert for Rieger, who is at, you know, minimum cost, and then we'll just leave it like this. And then we get binded the next turn, we get attack lower the next turn, but those really don't matter because we don't really care. We're not taking any damage because of the guaranteed guards and super guards, and we're constantly stacking up our weakness strike only on, you know, Lumi and Rieger technically, but, you know, 90% weakness strike every other turn is quite impactful. And it did help Elmesia and Lumi hit really big numbers last month. It's just that Maribel is just not a top tier protector. So there's the bind. We have 3 alts, so we already have a bad hand. We can't convert 3, we convert 2. And I don't want to try and RNG it into praying that it changes Lumi and Elmesia. So you know what? We're just gonna send a few orbs here. I think 1 and 1. Yeah, we're just gonna get the Rieger orbs out, and we'll just write it off. So now, you know, Octagon Lumi in the back has been reset, and we've, you know, helped reset Lumi's skill cost a little bit. The attack nerf means nothing because they're still going to be up front because they need the extra weakness strike. We have to leave them up front. And now if we skip to the end of turn 7 into turn 8, we have both EX alts. We have Rimuru up front, so now we can use his magic buff, which means nothing because he's not hitting. So they have 100% crit resistance. Rimuru lowers crit resistance by 100%, so it negates it. So now we just have guaranteed crits. Cool. 30% extra damage. So, and the 150 points means that we can use his other buff, which is the crit and stuff, and then the Elmesia buff. The Maribel doesn't matter because, you know, it takes effect at the very end of the fight, but yeah, it is what it is. And then we'll send Elmesia first because she has the ult effect, and we'll send Lumi last. Elmesia does almost 400k, so yeah, we don't need Lumi to do much more than that, but Lumi does 1.4. So there you go. We could have just nuked with Lumi and we would have been fine. So there are, I think, 4 teams that can clear, or maybe 5 teams that can clear out EX2. I will have another video coming out tomorrow with another batch of teams that can clear this. So if you can't run these teams, stay tuned for more builds. But let me know what you guys think. And if you have any other builds that I haven't covered and won't cover in the other video, let me know. Other people can see it. They can try using those instead. But that's it for me. Take it easy, guys, and I'll see you all later.